Well, today's speaker for the speaker series is Lauren with Love Inc. Take it away, Lauren, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Awesome. So I want to first thank People's First for inviting me to participate in this series. I think this is awesome. It's kind of a fun lunch and learn. Thank you, Sydney, for the information and the invite. So I'm going to share my screen, but just a little bit about me first. My name is Lauren Detmer, as Sydney said. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Love Inc., or Living Our Visions Inclusively. We are primarily located in the Madison area, but we are slowly expanding to Milwaukee, which is really exciting. So, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let me get all my screen set up. Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming you guys can all see the slideshow on my second screen. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I always just want to make sure technology isn't always the best. So today I'm actually going to be talking about building those community connections and really finding ways to connect to your community. So just a little bit about Love Inc. for those who haven't heard of it. We are a family-led organization based primarily in Madison, Wisconsin. Like I said, we are slowly branching out, which is really exciting. We were founded in 2007 by a group of families. Literally, they got together and over, I think it was like a coffee conversation, and they're like, how do we connect our loved ones with disabilities to their community? They have jobs, they are finished with school, but they really don't have activities outside of work or school. So how do we create those connections? So like I said, we are currently in 14 counties. We're primarily for sure in the Madison, Milwaukee area, but we are branching out pretty quickly, which is exciting. And yeah, so one of our biggest projects that we focus on is our Bridge Builder project, which you'll hear that term a lot today. Our Bridge Builders are staff members, and then they are paired with Bridge Builder project members. And together they kind of work on different goals and different things to kind of connect to their community. So every program is very individualized, it's very personalized, and really beneficial for everybody involved. So I'm going to talk about that very briefly, but this is a way that it's something that you can start doing personally as a self-advocate, and how you can find ways to connect to your community outside of school and work. So we're going to do a little bit icebreaker. So if everybody has a piece of paper or a pencil, or even if you just want to think out loud, that's fine. So thinking of ways, community mapping is always a really good starting point. We use that term a lot, community mapping, and it means something different to everybody. And truly every organization has different processes for community mapping. But I want you guys to think how you already are connected within your community. So this can be schools, this could be workplaces, this could be organizations like People's First. So how are you already connected to your community? I'll give you guys a few minutes to think about that. And then we'll do a little bit of a share out if everybody's comfortable. I like doing interactive presentations because nobody wants to sit and listen to me for an hour. So
Interactive's more fun too.
Exactly. I used to be a school teacher. I recognize that nobody wants to listen to my voice for an hour. So
Oh, that's cool.
yes. So what's a way that everybody is connected to your community? If you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud, feel free to put it in the chat. What's a way that you already feel connected to your community?
I can start it off for everyone so they're
Yeah.
more likely to share. Not necessarily like my immediate community, but I'm involved in a lot of disability advocacy, and sometimes with the advocacy stuff I post, I share it within like the city I live in Facebook page or Facebook group. And so then you get more interaction with people around you. Because I don't drive, so I don't like get super active in the actual community. It's more social media stuff.
Yeah. Well, and Sydney, you brought up a great point. Like everybody's community is very different. So your community doesn't just have to be the place you live, the town you live, but that's always a good starting point, especially for people who don't necessarily drive to find those connection points. But community can mean something different to everybody. So I think everybody on this call is already part of a community by joining this call and being part of People's First, being part of different self-advocacy groups. That's all community. It doesn't necessarily just have to be the place you live. Anybody else want to share out?
Well, I'll give you one that probably people haven't heard of. Drum corps community.
Yeah. So drum corps are like marching bands for those who haven't heard of it. They're mostly adults though, correct, Nathaniel?
No,
like post high school.
It's 14 through 21, and then you age out. So it is a high school activity. You do have alumni coming back all the time, but they don't really consider that. You do your the activity is geared towards musicians who want to prolong take their career to a professional level. So you get the music degree students and the master degree students and the PhD degree students to actually, and they eventually become teachers at high school, colleges, or going to the music industry at some capacity, at some job. And so
yeah, and even after you age out, I think it's something that you can be a part of too. I know one of my friends is a part of a drum corps organization that she was in, and then she aged out, and now she still like volunteers and helps out and does a lot of things like that. So that's a great point too, Nathaniel.
Like the Kilties.
Yeah,
that's like, and I'll tell you, that's a different kind of band.
Yes.
That's just inappropriate stuff. I mean, honestly, it's a different kind of, because in ages 14 to 21,
that's a big age range.
Yeah, it's usually you showing up for rehearsals, practice for a month, show up for another rehearsal, practice for a month, show up to another rehearsal, and then you're off until the end of summer. So.
Yep. Yeah. Does anybody else want to share out? Mira, I think that's how you say your name.
She'll probably type it in.
Okay, perfect.
And she's been
Or Lauren.
Pretty chatty in speaker series lately, so who knows?
Icebreaker, community mapping, where are you already connected within your community?
Yeah, so what's the way you're already connected to your community?
People First.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Lawrence or Chaz, do you want to share out?
Church,
yeah, that's a good one too, Lawrence. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Chaz?
Lauren, he'll probably have to type it in. He's deaf.
Okay. Oh,
So,
perfect. Okay.
so just give him some time. I mean, go on if you want to, because it takes some time. I'm not trying to speak for Chaz. I'm just saying it takes him quite a bit to.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, Chaz, if you want to type in your answer, I can share out when you are ready. So back when we kind of developed this presentation actually for the SD conference, or self-determination conference last year, obviously tweaked it a little bit for today. One of the things I thought about is I'm a very visual learner. So how can I make this whole concept of connecting to my community something meaningful to me, something easy to speak about, and use obviously something visual and something like concrete that I can understand. And one way I thought about doing that was through a tree. So I'm going to be talking about the tree a little bit. So I always like to think of a tree having 4 parts. So the trunk, or that main really sturdy part of the tree, is level 1. That's always going to be my focus point, because all of those connections come back to one person or one area. Level 2 are the limbs. So these are the really thick branches. And these are ways that you're necessarily you're always connected, you're already connected, daily activities, things you're already actively doing. Level 3 are the branches. So these are a little bit thinner, they're newer, you're starting to kind of feel them out, but they're getting there. They're getting strong like a limb. And then obviously we go to level 4, which is our newer branches. And I always think of this one as a cool thing, because a lot of things with, the trees and the leaves, like they change colors and the leaves fall, and you might get newer branches every season, and that's okay, because those connections might be newer. But those connections could also turn into branches. So it's very much like a growing process, and it's something that's changing and growing and developing with you. So level 1, this is our focal point, or our focus point. So this is who we are going to be talking about. So obviously for a lot of you, it's going to be you. And that's a perfect place to be. If you're in a bigger organization, it could also be an organization you're a part of. If you want to talk about like community connections for the organization as a whole. But I'm going to focus today on you guys. So the focus point is always going to be you. So that's the tree of the trunk. You're the ever growing, you're the roots. You have that really strong base to really branch out to these connections. So level 2, these are going to be those daily activities. So these are going to be things you're already actively involved in. Things that you enjoy doing, hobbies, because those are always really great connection points. So I'm going to use Lawrence's example because I like that one. So Lawrence said church. That's already a community that he has formed, and that's awesome. But it's how can we expand that community to make it a little bit more meaningful than just going to church on Sunday, or going to church, one day a week. How can we make it more? Somebody else said, Mara said people first. That's a great one. It's a great connection point. But how can we take people's first and branch it out a little bit more to connect it to you on a personal level? So then we have level 3. Level 3 are those branches. So this is where the connections should start. So going back to Lawrence's example, I think church is always a really great one. We have a lot of members that want to get involved in a church setting, and not even necessarily for religious purposes, but just to like be part of a community that's kind of already formed. So Lawrence, for example, probably, goes to church one day a week, and it could look very different. Maybe it's just going to church and sitting, in the same spot, or, and maybe talking to one new person. But how can we expand that further? Great. Let's think about interests. I always like thinking about the music part. So that's something that is really big in a lot of churches where they'll have, maybe a small band, or a pianist or a choir or something that you could join, to one, be part of that, branch out from just your church community and join a smaller community within that church setting. So other interests can be, maybe you're really into technology and your church has some aspect of a technology. So a PowerPoint, or maybe they do live feeds and you want to be part of the technical side of things. That's a very popular thing, especially coming out of a pandemic, that a lot of churches are exploring, like, how do we live stream this stuff? So that you could join another organization or another community part of your church setting by doing that. So it's always starting from those limbs and branching out to those branches based on your interests. And then we go to level 4. So these are the newer branches, and this I always consider more of the social connections. So social connections are really meaningful, and they don't have to be, an in-person social connection. It can be a virtual one, just like we're doing today. But those social connections are meaningful because that's what forms newer connections, newer communities, and it also brings somebody else in it with you, to participate with you. So you have that kind of shared experience. So I have a worksheet. I will put it in the chat. Do I have a picture of the worksheet? I don't. Okay. So I'm actually going to just screen share the worksheet. Just give me 1 second. Ignore my son crying in the background. I'm sorry. I have a babysitter here, but he's just not happy right now. So this document that I'm going to share is, I'm going to share 2 documents. I'm going to show 2 documents here. The first one I actually, okay. So the first one I created, the second one I actually got from ODC, from a presentation that I learned from them. And I like using ODCs as my first resource, and then I kind of go from the one that we created as my second resource. Okay, so here's the one from ODC, and this is always a really good starting point. So I will make it bigger for everybody. So this is kind of that brainstorming thing that I already shared and I already talked about during our icebreaker. But it's really talking about where you are already connected and how can we explore those connections further. So community places can be a coffee house, a library. I'm trying to think of some other really fun ones. Basically anything in your community. Everybody's community is different. Maybe it's a park, a community center, anything like that. A favorite restaurant or a local restaurant are always good ones too. Community people. Who are people in your community that you're already connected with? It can be a neighbor. It can be, a librarian, maybe a barista at the coffee house that you see on a semi-regular basis. Transportation is always obviously really important. So how are you going to get places? What does transportation look like? And if it's not feasible, what's a way to foster those connections in the future? Education, schools are always a great place. So this is kind of your brainstorming for your community mapping. And then I always like taking this and expanding it into the tree that we have kind of talked about. So I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger for everybody. So like I said, we started that bottom tier with just your name, and because you're the focus point. And then we're gonna branch it out into those daily activities or locations that you wanna focus on, that you wanna be more connected. So I was like pulling somebody in for this. Sydney, can I borrow you?
Sure.
Okay. So Sydney, what's something that you already do or that you're already interested in, every day or once a week? What's something you already do?
Advocacy.
Yeah. I always spelled this wrong, so I didn't. Okay. So advocacy. Perfect. So how do you want to expand that area more? Or what interests you about advocacy? What interests do you have about it?
Just connecting people with resources. Just with both of my jobs, I do that sort of, and many other things.
Okay, so connecting people with resources. I also heard you say earlier, social media.
Yep. I do a lot on there.
Yeah.
It's literally one of my job titles, social media assistant.
I mean, that's perfect. Okay, so now we're into those connections made / social connections. So I'm going to start with the social media one because that's always a really easy one to work from. So what's a social media platform that you've used in the past, Sydney?
Facebook.
Facebook. Okay. Have you developed any groups on Facebook?
Yep.
Okay. So what's a group that you're part of on Facebook?
I currently run Wisconsin Disability Connections Facebook group.
Okay.
And I also run a group called Pass the Mic with Self Advocates.
Yeah. So those are really great. So I'm gonna do Pass the Mic. I've never heard of that one. So okay. So Pass the Mic for Self Advocates. I think that's great. So those social connections can be, did you know Nathaniel before you started any of those social groups?
Well, we kind of worked together for a class that ARC was doing last year.
Okay. What about Mira? Did you know Mira?
Not really, no.
No, but through those, your social media stuff, you hosting those Facebook groups, you're forming those connections with Nathaniel and Mira on a social level. So it doesn't have to be anything big. It can be really small. So you guys are already building your community and connecting to your community just in a very different way. Obviously, the pandemic's also put a strain in a lot of stuff. And a lot of things have become virtual, and that's okay. So I'm going to also talk through another example.
Lauren,
Yeah.
I'm like what we're talking about is like a professional community strategy. From the tree that we just made, we're talking
Yeah.
about professional instead of personal, it sounds like.
So I was going to do a personal one too.
Oh, okay. Oops. Okay. Oops.
Oh my God, no, you're fine. So yeah, so Sydney, it is a professional one. That's a good point, Nathaniel. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, it is a professional one, but how can we make this a very personal connection to your community? So I'm going to start, I'm going to borrow Nathaniel for an example. So Nathaniel, what's something that you do? So what's an activity you're interested in or something that you already do? Like a personal activity you do?
Personal activity that I do. I've been working so much. I just been okay. From a personal activity that I do.
Yeah.
I usually just see like art. Let's just put art down. Let's
Okay.
just put like art, like art
Perfect.
crafts.
How about I do arts and crafts?
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So based on the activity that you're already doing, are you doing this at home mostly, or are you going to classes?
I'm doing it at home. I mean,
Okay.
to just give myself a break from advocacy.
Yeah, break from
And-
work. That's perfect. So you're mostly doing it at home, a break from work. Have you explored any art classes like outside your home, or is there a particular like? Do you like painting? Do you like watercolor? Do you like basket weaving?
I just, you know what? I'm just a simple person. I just like to open up a coloring book
Perfect.
and
Okay.
do and just take my time with a color pencil. I'm kind of old fashioned
No,
and
that's
just
perfect.
do just do that. Just
Okay. So then from there, so your connection made might be a little bit different, and that's okay. So yeah, it sounds like you really like the old-fashioned coloring book. Well, have you explored doing like going to like a coloring group, or even starting a coloring group? It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you just go to, but maybe getting two friends together to start a coloring group.
I've explored that. I'm just not that great at it yet. I mean, I kind of know it's here's the thing with coloring. I think it times to give you like meditation.
Yeah.
It gives you, so that's why I do art, like coloring, because it gives me time to self-reflect on what steps I want to take. So I know you want to like have a connection made here, but honestly, it just gives me time.
Yeah.
It really just gives me me time, and it gives me it just relaxes me. It's like you can watch movies, you can take out the dog, but it just like you can work on something, you can work on organization, like what colors you want to do. So what I try to do is with this coloring book thing that I'm doing, I'm actually coloring dogs, and I'm thinking, okay, how often do you want to, like, what do you want to say? How do you approach dogs?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of like a story in itself. So I don't know what the connection would be, but
Okay. So based on what you just said, I really like the last thing you just said. For you, it's a very personal thing. Where it's like I don't know how to make a connection or if there is a connection that's available to be made, because it is a very personal thing. I use it as my me time. I use it as quiet time, meditation time, which I honestly think is wonderful. But then the last thing you said is you really enjoy coloring dogs or working to kind of figure out dogs. And that's an interest for you. So kind of through coloring, one of the things you saw was you like coloring dogs. And I think that's awesome. So here's my suggestion. What if we, and obviously again, this is just an example. But what if you go to a local dog park? One of the things you said was, oh, it'd be really cool to see like how I can interact with dogs more, even past coloring. So, what if we would go to a local dog park? Maybe you and a friend, or even if your friend has a dog, or if you have a dog, just take a dog to a dog park.
or like a state park, or just
Yeah.
like something that just kind of takes that connection to another level.
Exactly. Or even just it can be something as simple as volunteering at in an animal shelter and just going and playing with dogs. Which it's something really simple, but it's something that, can take that coloring to the next level. And then, so let's just say you make a plan to go to a dog park once a week. Can we say that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. You don't have to commit to anything, I promise.
No. It makes sense though, because you're trying to find that connection. And let's say if you color, okay, for instance, my grandma was she was an art teacher, professor. She was an art professor too at University of Urbana.
Okay.
So what happens is that her community grow, and then she was able to teach classes at METC in the 70s because just of all the connections she built
Yeah,
within out. So it does make the impact.
it does. So, okay, so we're going to talk about you're going to go to the dog park once a week. And when you go to the dog park, you can go by yourself. I don't think it's something where you have to bring a group of people with you. I don't think you have to go with anybody. You can just go and hang out by yourself at the dog park. Maybe you bring your coloring book and you bring some pencils and you just color your surroundings. And eventually, I don't know about you, but when I go to a dog park, I have a really hard time not going up and saying hi to dogs.
Yes.
Or even just on the street. Let's be real. I love dogs. So maybe you make a goal to start really small and say, you're going to say hi to one new dog a week.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great goal.
Yeah. Very simple goal. And it also has to be is going up to the owner saying, is it okay if I say hi to your dog? And the owner will either say yes or no. And if the owner says no, that's okay. You pick a different dog. If the owner says yes, you pet the dog, say hi to the dog, and maybe have a small conversation with the owner. And it can be a really simple conversation. It doesn't have to be anything meaningful. The dog's name, how old the dog is, where you got the dog, are there toys your dog enjoys? So it can be a very small stepping point to forming that connection with a dog, but also with having those conversations with the dog owner just to kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And then you can just say, after 30 seconds, a minute, you can say, thanks for letting me pet your dog. It was really nice meeting you. I'm just going to go back and color, and that's okay.
And then if you see him the next week, then he or she may say, well, what do you do for a living? And then you have, and then, I am putting on an event with an advocacy. Would you like to show? So when it comes to like the single basic activity could lead to something personal, could lead to something professional. It's about people skills. It's how you interact with people. I mean, it goes to many levels. That's what I'm saying.
100%. Yeah. And those connections are going to build, and they're going to build, and they're going to explore. And some of the connections might not last, and that's okay. Because if you think about it, if you go outside, our trees right now are full of leaves, but give it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. I guarantee you that those leaves are going to be changing colors and they're going to be falling down to the ground. And it doesn't mean the connection stops. It just means, maybe it's time for a new connection. Maybe that connection wasn't working. But come spring, there's going to be those opportunities for new connections to grow and explore more. And that's perfect.
Now, Lauren, would this make sense? Like, if you know that a connection is not promising to anything, you should probably actually kind of research.
Yeah. And
research like what does, like, I met this person at this event, and I met this person at that event. What could those connections. It's kind of like a network. That's what you're practically talking about. It's like building your network, actually, because you have so many people coming at you, and you have to balance it to make sure that you know what you want. And this is going with personal and professional. So
Exactly. Well, and the thing is like I said earlier, community means something very different to everybody. So your network is also your community. It might not mean that all of your network connections are in the same community, but that's okay. Because even with me, I'm part of a community of a group of moms because I'm a mom, and that's a community that I'm a part of. But I'm also part of a professional community in like the disability world. Now, those two worlds don't necessarily collide, but if my friend in my mom community has an individual or has a child with a disability, then those worlds are going to collide because I can support them.
I'll be back in a couple minutes.
So it's building and connecting communities together to create a larger community. We can start very big. We're all part of, I believe everybody's in the state of Wisconsin. I could be wrong. But we're all part in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin itself is a community. Then if we break it down, we can go by county. Your county is a community because there's different resources in each county, in each area. So I'm going to break it down further to, I'm in Dane County. That's where Madison is located. So Dane County, but Dane County even has communities. So I'm going to think just about the Madison community. So now I've gone from Wisconsin to Dane County to Madison. But then even from there, you can break it down even smaller to the west side of Madison, the north side of Madison.
Or the neighborhood in your street, or your street.
Exactly.
I mean, it just really depends how, I think this whole presentation is like how you want to start like a community within your interests,
Mm-hmm.
and then expanding that community if people want to go forward. But you're gonna have ups and downs too. I mean,
Yeah.
let's-
And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Even thinking back to Lawrence, and one of the things he said he was connected with was church. So thinking back to that example of how can we make that a stronger connection, which can lead to other things. So I'm going to go with the technical track that we kind of talked about earlier with church. So Lawrence, again, Lawrence, this is just an example. So Lawrence goes to church once a week, and he sees people recording the church service, and he wants to learn more about it. So he goes and talks to the tech team and is like, hey, how can I help? And it can be something as simple as that. Maybe it's just getting there early and setting up the equipment. It doesn't have to be anything crazy big. He doesn't have to take everything over. It can be something where he's already attending church. So how can he just get something a little bit more out of it? How can he be helpful in the community he's a part of? So say Lawrence starts setting up for the tech crew every week. Obviously it's a big job, it's a big, commitment, but he's learning and he's exploring. So Bob, I'm just using the name Bob. Bob runs the webinar series, or does the live feed for church. So Lawrence and Bob talk on a weekly basis, even just saying hi, how are you? What can I help you with today? Where is support needed? But that conversation starts going more and more in depth. So it becomes, hey, how are you? How was your week? How was work? What are activities you're doing? Are you going to watch the local football game on Friday night? And then it can start building from there. So Lawrence and Bob have now found that they don't just like technology, they also really like football. So forming again that connection to, hey, how about we go to a local football game tomorrow, on Friday night? Or, let's go see a local sports team play. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be really smart, really small, but going from that larger community that Lawrence was already a part of and really focusing in based on interests, and he can form more connections. And then him and Bob go to a football game on Friday night and they meet other fans. So now Lawrence is not just part of his church community. He is now also part of this football community from meeting people at a sports, event that he felt comfortable going to because Bob, was also involved. So again, he now has his church community. He has his technical, church technology community, but then he also has a sports community that he's a part of. So just from being part of that one community, he's now part of 3. And that's really what this is going on. Even saying with Nathaniel, going from, I'm getting an echo. I don't know if somebody was unmuted.
It's Mara. I think it's Mara's sound system in a computer. So don't worry. No,
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
Don't worry. No worries. You're good, Mara.
So then there is even back to Nathaniel's example of going to a dog park. Maybe he meets this dog owner and they start going on they meet at the dog park once a week. They start talking and they both have a love of dogs and art. And then, Nathan comes in and is like, oh, my grandma actually teaches at a local college. Would you want to go to an art class with me? And so from there, you invite them to something that you're passionate about, or you're putting on an event that you're putting on, Nathaniel, an art class, an art event, whatever it is. And then you build community from there. So you now have kind of like your dog lover community, your art community. And then maybe you guys explore a cooking community or something like that from, based on shared interests.
And
So
she might say, do you know anyone that could do like a Facebook page? Yeah. Or do you know anyone? So it has a lot of potential of building a personal relationship, but expanding to a professional relationship, but understanding that, we just want to probably talk about personal, just like fun stuff at the dog park and not get too.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah. So
obviously don't invite them to an event when you first meet them.
Exactly.
Work to get to know them and build that relationship and that personal connection before you explore the bigger community with that.
Exactly. Don't shock them. Don't shock them.
Don't shock them.
Don't shock them, everybody. Don't shock them,
But it's also something too where your community that you want to build is going to build slowly. It doesn't necessarily. It's not going to happen overnight, kind of like we said. And that's okay. And just allowing it to build slowly and realizing that the repetition in going to the same place, trying the same thing 3, 4, 5 times is going to happen. And just like Nathaniel said earlier, like there's going to be ups and downs and there's going to be ins and outs. But I also think too that even just building it on a Sydney, one of the things you had shared was you don't really drive. So how can I build those connections without driving places? Maybe it is you go to an event and you meet 3 or 4 people and it's sharing Facebook information and it's, becoming connected on Facebook. And then eventually maybe they join your advocacy groups, which you've already started, which I think is great. So it's just building the communities that you're already a part of is always a really good starting point. I know it doesn't always feel like you're part of a community, but you are. Your school that you graduated from high school with is a community in itself.
It is.
Contacting teachers, old classmates, people that you've worked with. Your workplace environment is a community. Even though it is a professional community, it can be taken to, a personal community too, by forming those personal connections at work. So communities continuously build and expand and grow, and it doesn't have to be just one thing. You can have other communities based on your interests. I've talked a lot. What questions does everybody have about, kind of finding those connections to your communities?
This is Ramsey. This is a great presentation. But I got one for you. Let's say hypothetically, I want to move to Madison someday down the line. And Sydney, the new here, she does such a great job of building community here. So, let's say hypothetically, I want to move to Madison somewhere down the line, because there's more opportunity for transportation. How would I go about building a community to do that? Yeah. I'm so sorry. I didn't catch your name or what organization you're from. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, Ramsey. I'm glad you joined us. So my name is Lauren. I work for actually Love Inc. So Living Our Visions Inclusively, and we are located in Madison. Thinking about that, I love that is a perfect question. How do you find connections to a brand new community? So one of the things I heard you say was, could you just mute yourself? Thank you. I just don't like hearing myself talk. It's weirdly enough.
Yeah.
So I really like that idea, Ramsey. So let's start from zero. You're just moving to a community. You have no idea. You're just moving to a new location. You have no idea. How do you create a community in your new location? So it can be something as simple as contacting Sydney, being like, hey, you've done a great job building community here in Sydney. You're in Milwaukee, right?
No, I'm in Broadhead area.
Broadhead. Okay. So you've done a really great job building community in Broadhead. How can I expand it to Milwaukee? Or I'm sorry, to Madison. So, Sydney,
because here's the deal, right now, I live in Hudson, and I'm grateful for everything. Okay,
yeah,
but Hudson was way up north.
it is.
And there is no, I shouldn't say no, but there is very little transportation here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is a purely hypothetical example, so
No, that's perfect.
take it for what it's worth. But let's say I wanted to move to Madison someday because there's more transportation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that example. So here's the in the hypothetical situation, Ramsey. So what we're gonna do is, you're gonna move to say you're moving to Madison. Again, hypothetical. One of the things you'll need before you even get to Madison is a place to live. So say, you contact Sydney and you say, hey, Sydney, I'm thinking about moving to Madison. Can you get me in contact with that Lauren person that, did that presentation a while ago? And Sydney will share my email with you. And one of the things I'll do is I will say, oh my gosh, so exciting. Madison's a great place to live. I've lived here my whole life. Let's start looking for an apartment building that works for you. So maybe I send you 3 or 4 ideas of apartment buildings that I recommend. And one of the apartment buildings that you decide to look into is Overlook. That's we have like 10 plus people in Overlook. So that's why I always say Overlook. So you decide you're going to move into Overlook apartments when you move to Madison. Well, you still don't know anybody. You still don't really feel connected to the community, but you're in this new apartment building and in this new space that I recommended to you. So one of the things I'm going to do is, hey, we have a really great system at Overlook where they host a community dinner or a building dinner. So once a month, people take turns cooking and they have like a dinner, like just for anybody who attends in their apartment building. So I would maybe we work to find that out when that dinner is, and you attend the dinner for the first time and you have a really good connection with Joe. I don't know who Joe is, but Joe. And you and Joe start talking about something you're both really interested in. So now you have an awesome new apartment. You have met a few neighbors, and you have a really good connection with Joe, who lives in your apartment building, because that's even great. So now by attending that community dinner, you are already forming a community within your apartment building. And it's a community that's formed. It's a community that you moved into. But the nice thing about it is from that community that you've moved into, your apartment building, you're able to form great social connection by meeting new people just in your building. And then from there, you can attend really cool events like Love Inc. nights and meet other people based on your interests, and then expanding your community out very slowly by just moving to an area and talking to people that live in the area. And then by the end, you're like, I'm a pro, I'm forming all these connections. I'm going to start, I'm going to start presenting on making community connections. So it can be really small, Ramsey, where it's just attending an event that's already in a community that you feel that you're connected to. And then from there, talking to members in that community and exploring future interests and seeing where those members are connected. And it kind of spider webs from there to bigger connections.
And I apologize. I had to walk in late. You probably already went through this. I appreciate what Loving says. But can we connect offline and you can give me a better idea of the services you offer, because I might want to bring some of those thoughts in here, because I know it's it's a beautiful community to live in, but I'm just trying to make the best of it.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think it can be something just as small as going to, I was weirdly enough local, like we have a few members that actually go that aren't senior citizens, but go and hang out or like go and volunteer at the senior center. And we'll end up getting connected and doing like fun activities with some senior citizens. And I feel like every town has like a senior citizen center. But also just looking into like libraries and other small town things. It doesn't have to be anything big. And I think that's what really I want to kind of, just kind of bring all this back together. We've talked a lot of different scenarios today. But though creating connection to your community is really important, but I want to just really bring home that it doesn't have to be a very large thing. Creating community is a very personal thing. And I can guarantee you guys are all part of a community already with People's First, which I think is wonderful. And it's really just finding out what resources are available to you and also finding out what interests that you have, and really exploring them further. Because based on those interests, you can branch out to many other things and form those social connections, and from those social connections form new communities.